I don't know how accurate the statistics are on this, but it's something like, only 1 in 3 women actually experience orgasm, which I think is ridiculous if that's true. I don't know if that's true. If any chicks out there, let us know. But my experience with it is, well, I sort of understand. Not many people understand anatomy. That's a big one, right? So growing up, everyone's like, oh, you don't even know where the G-spot is, or you don't even know where this or that, and all this stupid shit. And then, you learn about anatomy and you realize, like, what would the G-spot be? And then you realize, and the clitoris is the erectile tissue that, can become stimulated. And with some women, their clitorises are more, they're closer to the external surface, or they're more outward. And then some clitorises, or some have clitoral tissue that is more internal and can push into the vaginal canal. And so you can get stimulation from both directions. Some women, it's more shallow so that they don't have that internal stimulation. Some women, it's very deep and they can get serious amounts of internal stimulation. Well, like, just a basic understanding of anatomy, I think a lot of people fail with. And with women, what I actually think it is it isn't actually the man's job to make a woman come, and it isn't the woman's job to make a man come. It's my job to, become aroused and do that. And it's their job for them. Now, I don't just put that on them blindly. Like, for me, it's never really been about just getting, a load off or just coming, right? It is more about that connection, mainly because I find that more nourishing. And again, I find this like, there's a good analogy we can make between junk food and whole foods. Is junk food, it seems like, it gives you all that stimulation initially, but it leaves you wanting because there's no nourishment in it. There's no nutrition. It's just all the trickery, right? The colors and the flavoring and the sweetness. And I think casual sex is a lot like that. I think it's very superficial, right? There's no deep sort of connection and meaning with it. And so I think if you get, used to that sort of superficial stuff, it leaves you wanting over time. I've always just intrinsically just sort of tended to steer more towards those deeper and more meaningful sorts of connections. But for me, with all of that, it's funny because even though I believe that it's woman's responsibility to be in tune with herself enough to know what arouses her or pleasures her, etc., and to, be open to, doing those things for each other in that engagement. That kind of makes sense, right? But I've also found that it's also way easier if you just make them come first, and then there's no pressure. So, and there's many ways to do that. And I think a lot of guys overemphasize certain, things, like thinking, like, you understand the fact that, if it is a fact that only 1 in 3 women, regularly experience orgasm, and that not all women have large clitoral masses in the vaginal canal. Most of the clitoris is on the outside, right? So, sex isn't typically going to be the greatest mechanism for the orgasm, but other things are. Like, think outside the box. Come on, guys. Like, anyway.
I agree, bro. I think making love and having sex are two completely different things. I never enjoyed one night stands. Didn't like that. That's why, for me, it was just about, I'm going to try and please them, and I'm going to try and please myself. It's essentially quite a selfish act. And I realized that. So that's why I never really enjoyed one night stands or trying to pick up girls to have sex with them, because making love is just on another level. I agree. Like, when you have that deep connection with somebody and you learn how to pleasure them and they learn how to pleasure you, it's on another level, completely different level. And you can get a lot more comfortable. Like, for me personally, sometimes it's really difficult for me to get a hard on if I don't know the person, because like I'm nervous, I'm not comfortable, and I'm just trying to like I almost feel like I'm like trying to force it onto myself to sleep with this girl, because I put in all this work to do it. And when it gets to the moment, I'm like, fuck, man, this is tough. Like, I'm nervous. I feel like pressured, and my dick isn't going up like I want it to be right now. Whereas when you're having a deep connection with someone, you're comfortable with that person, I can get the hardest dick. You know what I mean? But
absolutely.
Yeah.
But another big one too is so much of arousal is actually like that teasing, right? And knowing how to make someone feel safe or comfortable, and then not rushing for those outcomes. Like like you just said, like a lot of the time, I'm not really engaging in the sex just to bust a nut. It's actually a very nice way to connect with somebody and share an intimate moment, right? And that in itself is a really nice thing, right? And so slowing it down, taking all that pressure off, that's a very big part of it. But I think a lot of, if we come very, so it's like goal directed, like you got one goal and it's, I got to do this to get off, etc. That can put a lot of pressure on it. And I think they're the times when you probably end up with very unsatisfying orgasms, right? Like, the one night stand and that sort of stuff, that very superficial thing. Those orgasms might only last like, 2, 3, 4 seconds, maybe 5 seconds if you're lucky. Like it's a very fleeting thing. Whereas when you play that longer game and you slow it down, it's more of a dance and it's an entwinement, you're entangled with the other person intimately at that moment. You're both sharing some sort of vibrational state, and you're deeply connected. That orgasm can last for a very long time. They can be, 20, 30, 40 seconds. And like, that's a completely different experience. And it's a whole body, or my experience is it's a whole body experience. You feel it everywhere. And it sometimes can be dangerous. Like, if you go for too long, I get a cramp sometimes. And then it's this fucked up thing between pleasure and pain, and you got to start worrying, and it's this whole big thing. But yeah, I think slowing it down, playing that longer game, not just doing it for that one outcome, but enjoying the actual experience of making love. That entire process that goes into it, that deep connection, that's just you. I think that's one of the beautiful things about making love is everything else disappears in that moment. There is nothing else. There is no one else. It's just the two of you, entangled together. I think that's a really cool thing.